So, welcome everyone to the first general catch up for Down Under Trading. Been a bit of a whirlwind start to the year so far with ETF approvals. There's a heap of hype around that leading into it, but proved to be a bit of a sell the news event. GB the Grayscale ETF has been selling off fairly heavily, and it's been pretty much negating all the inflows that we've been seeing with BlackRock, Fidelity, and ARK Invest, and the other smaller ETFs that also got approved. I think it plays into what's happened historically at this time of the cycle, leading into the halving. We typically haven't seen any monthly closes above the 50% level, which currently in this cycle sits at around 42,300. We did get very close on the yearly close to be above that level, but it was a bit of a line ball, depending on the chart that you looked at. Some charts closed below, some charts closed above, but in either case are only by a few dollars. The key is to see where January sort of falls, whether it does go above or it does go below. It looks like at this stage it's going to be below. And I expect that to be the case leading up into the halving and probably a month or two after the halving. But once we do sort of get to that time period of around May, June, even into July, I do think that we'll start to see Bitcoin start picking up a bit more, getting above that 43K level and closing out some of the key closes, weeklies, monthly timeframes above that level. And then starting to challenge the all-time high come the second half of this year, where there's a lot of bullishness going on. We've got stocks in the US, Europe, South America are all going bonkers at the moment, making all-time highs if they haven't already. That's going to continue as well. No worries, KTX. Good to see you in here, mate. I think this might be your first catch-up with us.
Yes, it is. Hi, guys. Hi, all.
Welcome.
Everyone's familiar names from Sweat Economy Discord.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I expect the bullishness to continue for the remainder of this year, particularly for the reasons that we're in a presidential year. Also, where we sort of sit in the 18-year property cycle. I think that there'll be still a lot of calls for a recession and whatnot, but I think it's just going to be noise, in my opinion. Over in Premium, I did a post about the Japanese stock market, the Nikkei. That's within 7% of its all-time high, which hasn't been tested, let alone broken, since 1990. It's been on a 15-year bull run, and it's starting to get pretty damn close to surpassing that all-time high, which is going to be something pretty special. What's interesting with Japan is that they're one of the highest debt to GDP ratios out of any leading nation in the world. I have talked about the numbers before, but it's so much more than what the US debt to GDP ratio is. But yet we had a big scare around the middle, I think it was in May last year, about the debt crisis in the States. So I guess when you start looking at the facts and what's going on in the world, and then you see the fear that gets created from these so-called events, it is just fear, and it is just noise. When you're looking at these news events, I think 2024 is going to be very much an up-only year. I mean, there is no straight lines. We do have corrections. We do have pullbacks. We're seeing one now with Bitcoin. But as far as up only goes, this will probably be about as close to up only as we'll get. And that'll probably lead into 2025 as well. Looking at, I've been a big advocate for Bitcoin dominance, and I think we might be starting to witness that starting to top out a bit now. We saw a significant pullback from around 55.5%, and it pulled back quite a bit. I think it was around 10% from a percentage perspective. It pulled back. So when you look at the Bitcoin dominance percentage, it would have gone from about 55.5 down to 51%. And then we did see a bit of a retest of that level, and it produced a lower high. So now we've come back down to test the lows, and it's looking to be forming a bit of a higher low. So it's in a bit of an indecisive state. But if we look at what's happened historically with Bitcoin dominance, at this part of the crypto cycle, it has typically created a bit of a falling wedge. So with that, we should start to see alts gaining a little bit more momentum than Bitcoin and holding up a little bit better. And the ones that you see having significant drops are probably going to be a little bit weaker come the bull run towards the end of the year. Where the ones that seem to be holding up relatively well or better in comparison, that they may likely do a little bit better. So that's something that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on over the next probably 2 to 3 months. I think it's definitely an alt buying opportunity leading into the halving, whilst we're going to have Bitcoin having a bit of a retrace, probably down to around the 35k mark. It's going to create good opportunities for getting into alts that you haven't already, or increasing your positions if that's what suits your portfolio. And then what we saw last cycle is, with this falling wedge, we saw a breakout to the upside of the dominance, where it put in a higher high, but then it had a capitulation at the end of that, and that was when it really just sort of fell away. I can see something similar sort of happening, but when it broke out of the falling wedge, it was around, I think it was around 6 or 7 months post halving. So for us, that will put us around November, which sort of falls in line with when the US president election is going to be going on, and that's also quite typically quite a volatile time for the stock market. So I think all in all, for me, it's sort of coming all together. I'm looking forward to seeing how the year plays out, whether it sort of plays along the narrative that I think it's going to do. I have documented what my thoughts are within the premiums section of Down Under Trading, with my crystal ball ideas, and also how what I think is going to take place and when. Moving on to some alts, we can probably have a bit of a talk around Sweat, as that's what most people here are from. It has had a fairly significant pullback from its high that it made. I'm just jumping into the chart just to have a bit of a look. And so we did see a run up to around the 0.014 mark, give or take, back in the middle of December. And that was a significant high that got put in, and it's since had a retrace. I have spoken about a pullback zone that I was keen on, which ranged from 0.0097 down to around 0.0092. And we've bounced into that zone quite a bit. Within the chart that I've got drawn, that's the bottom of my parallel channel, and just outside of it. But it's also noting key prior high lows that have been produced back in the middle of November and the start of November. And so it looks like it's getting a bit of strength when it's dipping into these zones. We've had a couple nice bounces since, one of which was only a couple of days ago, where we saw a pump up to around the 0.0135 mark. I might share my screen so you guys can see what it is that I'm looking at. Might make it a little bit easier. So this is just in the sweat chart here. I do have quite a number of fibs that are currently showing on it, which you will have to just ignore, I suppose. So back when we were trading around the middle of the channel here, I posted up this, where this rectangle box here was a key zone that I was interested in, and I recommended to anybody that wanted to pick up some more spot holding of sweat, that would probably be a good zone to be adding to your bags. The idea for this zone was that it's the bottom of the parallel channel, sweeping this low here, but not breaking this low here. For me, this low here is extremely important. We don't want to break below it, because that's going to change our trend from being an uptrend to a downtrend. So as we can see, the first time we came into my buy zone, we did wick through it, but then we had a nice bounce out. We broke back down to test it. We weren't unable to make a lower low, but then we saw that massive pump, and it's actually quite interesting how that pump stopped dead on the top of my parallel channel. Now, I've had this channel for quite some time. We did break through it back here, but fell back into it. Came down, tested the lows. I'd like to see us still maintain this movement to the upside. As long as we're within this channel or above it, I'm sitting pretty comfortable with sweat. It's not an aggressive channel. I mean, on a weekly time frame, it's not very aggressive, but we have seen some sustained slow growth, which is nice. It's healthy. It's good. This pump here was the first decent pump that we had with volume, and now we've seen a bit of volume come into it last week as well. So yeah, I think as long as we can hold this channel while Bitcoin has its correction, it's going to hold sweat in pretty good stead moving forward. I mean, at this point, when we got up here, we were sitting on 3x from the lows, which is pretty decent. Was there any tokens or indexes or I don't know, currencies that you guys wanted me to have a look at specifically?
Near, maybe?
Near? Yeah, I can have a look at Near. Baldrick wants to look at Near as well. So I haven't actually been in a Near chart for a little while, but we can have a look. So I had a very nice pump from $2, pretty much straight up to about 460. Experiencing a bit of a retrace now. It looks like the volume's starting to drop off a bit. Still early days, so I don't think that the downside's necessarily over. If we see this low here get broken at $2.70, so I think we'll then start to get down into this area here around $2.20 over the next few weeks. I'll be looking to pick up a bag of Near. I've missed my opportunities on personally picking up a bag of Near. I think I've got about 4, maybe 5 alts that I've been buying. Near is one that I do want to get into. So yeah, I'll be looking to add into a spot bag down here, and the lower it goes, I'll just increase or multiply my investment on Near. I think it's a promising project, personally. Would have been nice to get some down here, but yeah, we can't always see where the bottom's going to be. I was hoping there for it to come down to around 80 cents, and that was when I was going to start bagging it up, but we never got there. But that's fine. I have spoken about where my projections for Near is, and realistically, whether you get in at $3, $2, or $1, where I think it's going to go, I don't really think it makes a massive impact. You know, if you're selling at $40 or $50, by that point you're really not going to be looking at whether you got in at $3, $2.50, or $2. So it does look like that there is a bit more downside here. In particular, is this low. I think we might see us come down and fill some of this wick, because it is a lower low on the daily trend before it had the pump up. You got it's producing lower low, higher low, lower low, and then it's taken off. And I have spoken a little bit at length before about these wicks. I do think that they fill at least 50% of the wick most of the time. Just turn off my magnet. We'll see where 50% sits. This is just going to be roughly drawn. So around $2.15, we'll call it. Something around there. I'll buy above that level, but I'll definitely be filling most of my bag. I'll be a decent buyer in this range. Within this wick, I'll be looking to bag up quite a bit in here. Was there any other tokens you guys wanted me to have a bit of a squiz at, bit of a look?
Can you maybe take Solana? It's
Yeah, we can have a look at Solana.
Important comparison to Near, I think.
Pardon?
I think Solana is most important comparison to Near, because they're both layer ones, and Solana is quite a hype project. So I think Near follows them quite closely.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we can have a look. So Solana, for me, looks like it's starting to break down a bit. And the reason being is let's see if I can freehand this. Okay. So it's coming in right on the support trend line right now. It has dipped slightly below, but we're not seeing any strength come from it as it comes down to this trend line. And this trend, like, you could really probably get this trend line back down to the $20 mark if you're being quite a stickler. But I'm happy with just there. So for me, it does look like it wants to have a pullback, and rightly so. I mean, where it came from, it was trading at back in September $20 or $17, and got up to $130. So it's overdue to have a decent correction, I think. But I guess the question is, where is it going to come down to? Where can it come down and test? I think to start with, this breaker structure here at around $78 would be the first level of support I'd be looking at. We can draw some fibs as well. Might change the time frame. Yeah, so I'm getting $78 again. Golden Pockets at the $78 mark. I think we can get down to there quite easily. I'd like to see it probably have a deeper retrace than that, to be honest. But coming down to around that $77, $80 mark, and getting a bounce up, I think would be a fair expectation. A pullback, it's a substantial pullback from where it was, from the high that it made. You know, looking at a 40% pullback, more or less. So yeah, I think that there's still downside for Solana. Can it go down further than there? Yep, certainly can. We did a fair bit of trading at this $60 range. We could come down to there and test that zone. And then even failing that, I mean, it really depends on what happens in the markets, but I don't think it would be unheard of to say that it comes down to $33. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But I would say that it's not impossible for it to come down to $33. If it came down to $33, I'll be bagging up some Solana. But the first port of call for me would be to see what happens at this $78 mark, which I think is a quite high possibility of it getting there. Bitcoin's having a bit of a dip as well. I'll just show the Bitcoin dominance that I was talking about. So this is when we had the run up to 55%, and then it had a bit of a violent pullback. Really, all of these are actually quite violent pullbacks compared to what we experienced historically. If we look in this zone here, they weren't quite as near as volatile. Once we did break above 50%, they did get a little bit more volatile. But they only just broke the previous cycle breaker structure before it took off again. But this time, we've gone quite a bit deeper. Once we broke past the breaker structure, and we've tried to have a rally back up, but then it's met quite a bit of volume. As we see down here, big wicks as well. Does look like it's coming back up again. But the first key that we want to see for the Bitcoin dominance, if we want it to go up, to break this high here. And then above that, we've got the high at 55.3%. The purple box that you see above, that's where I think is going to be the high for the Bitcoin dominance for this 4-year cycle. Doesn't have to get there. It's more just a feeling, I suppose, and based on looking at the chart itself, but it really doesn't affect my trading or anything like that. And on the weekly looks even more bearish, to be honest. Got an engulfing bearish candle, and a couple little green wicks that are appearing. So I think Bitcoin dominance looks like it's rolling over a bit. And we can go back and have a look at what happened in the prior cycle. So this is what I was talking about with the last cycle, when the Bitcoin dominance made its high, and then this is leading into the halving. I'm fairly certain that gap, around this gap here, the halving, May 2020. So as we can see, it had a decent pullback of almost 12 months, where the dominance was pulling back. And then around here is when it's going into it to attack the all-time high and go to new highs. And it went up and made a higher high. That's what I'm sort of seeing starting to form here. Doesn't have to play the same, but if we did see it starting to pull back, maybe 47% or something around that figure, come the second half of the year, and then as we go to challenge the all-time high, can rip up, get into that rectangle zone, that target zone that I have there, before it capitulates and falls away next year. Just a little theory I've been running with. Reason why I've got that level. So we've got, that's where the support came in for the dominance in the last cycle before it ran up to make its high. And that's it really, just between that and just looking at how much percentage gain we've had here in comparison to this area. There's a lot more alts, a lot more stronger alts this time around compared to what there was last time as well. So I really don't think we're going to get a Ben Cowan special and up above 60%, even up to 70%. I think he's might be dreaming a little bit with that one, but who knows? It could happen. Was there did anyone have any questions? I'm still here, Baldrick. Can you hear me, mate? All right. Well, I think that might draw us to a close for today. But if you guys did have any questions, you're always more than welcome to put them up within the server, and I'll answer them as best as I can, or put up a chart that sort of suits. But yeah, otherwise, stay safe and take care of yourselves, and we'll do another catch up probably next week, I think.
Thank you.
No worries, mate. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.